Hallelujah! We can buy wine. The restrictions have dropped, at least they have in part. The queues formed for 10 o'clock this morning, and across South Africa, cellars are being very happily refilled after what has seemed like an absolute age. I was down in Pick n Pay doing some filming this morning, and from about 8:30 there were people just queuing around, glancing in the direction of the wine aisle, just having a look at the watch. Oh, there we go. In we go, load up and get hold of some wine. It is fantastic for so many reasons. Mostly because people just wanted a glass of wine, but also for the industry, an industry that's been pummeled and hammered and dragged through the mud for the better part of 2 years. Is now back. It's only 4 days a week, but at least the restaurants can also sell a bit, and it does take some of the sting out of very, very difficult times. There's still a way to go. There's still a lot that our wine industry has to recover from. But at least as wine lovers, kicking off from today, we can be buying wine, buying proudly South African product, restocking cellars, and raising glasses to the phenomenal people who make wine across South Africa. And I've got two of those people today with great excitement. One of them, he probably wrote the book on making organic wine around the world. You mention organic wine, not just South Africa, anywhere in the world. And the name Reyneke comes directly to mind. He does some extraordinary things, does Johan. And we're going to be speaking to him just a little later on in the show, tasting some of his wine, but also finding out why he's so passionate about making wine the right way and doing it in a manner which is so lauded by an increasingly environmentally conscious wine drinking world. We also head to another bastion of Stellenbosch winemaking, and Neil Ellis, not Neil himself, instead it is Warren, and he'll be talking us through a couple of wines, as well as a really cool dinner on the horizon. In fact, there's one of those with Johan as well. Also a great competition. There is rather a lot of Neil Ellis wine to be won at Pick n Pay over the next month or so. But before we chat to Warren, before we chat to Johan, there is a competition from Dan Really Likes Wine. Now, we had to do something to celebrate the fact that we are now finally able to get out, to get back shopping, to load up and to start celebrating and enjoying South African wine again. And so we thought we would add to those celebrations with a little competition. Here it is. The liquor ban is over. We can buy wine again. We can restock our cellars. And to celebrate, I've got a fantastic giveaway. Dan Really Likes Wine in partnership with Antonie Rupert Weyne. It is this, a Jeroboam. That's the Afrikaans word for 3 litres. A Jeroboam of the Antonie Rupert Jean Roy Rosé. It's Provençal style with a lovely South African flourish. And all 3 litres are yours in this wonderful presentation case. Simply take a photo of yourself with your favourite bottle of wine at your nearest Pick n Pay, post it online, tag Dan Really Likes Wine and tag Antonie Rupert Weyne, and one of you will be walking away with 3 litres of fabulous rosé. So there we go. What a prize that is. Thank you to Bear and the team at Antonie Rupert. That is 3 litres of fabulous rosé. So whether it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, or it is on Twitter, just tag yourself in Pick n Pay. We're holding up a bottle of your favorite wine, and one of you will be winning that absolutely fabulous prize. Can't wait to give it away. We'll announce the winner next Thursday. Next Thursday, that is the 5th of August, on the live show. So counting down to that. Right, let's get our shot away. Already there are people watching. Victor Mofokeng from Kruger Shalati, my first food and wine pairing to welcome my guests, and won't they be excited today? As I'm sure you are, Victor. Lovely to have you watching the show. Well, you're in for a treat tonight, Victor. A little later, Johan Reyneke joins us. But right now, let's head over to the Ellis family, and it is a family affair indeed at Neil Ellis, and say a very warm welcome to winemaker Warren. Good evening. Welcome to the show, and a very happy Warren Ellis, I'm sure. We can sell wine again.
Yeah, that's great news. Thanks, Dan. And yeah, at Neil Ellis, I think everybody in Stellenbosch is really happy to, well, finally see the end of this ban and yeah, sell some wine.
It's been such a tough last 18 months or thereabouts, and we don't need to bang on about that. We're all very, very aware of it. But just from your perspective, you guys are a well-established estate. You've got a good name. You sell a lot of wine. You've got a lot of very loyal customers. In real terms, are you able to get a feel for just how much this last little stretch has hurt?
Well, it's Dan, I think it's really it's difficult to really really understand and see what the total expense was of and extent was of this ban. I think we're only going to see it a couple of months down the line, but it's really nothing one can recover of. It's you need to really close your eyes, dig deep, and look forward.
All right, well, we're going to be doing our best to do that over the next little while and then celebrate the very best of South African wine, which is exactly why we have you with us, because you are continuing quite a tradition. It is a wine estate that bears your surname but not your first name. Before we get into your wine journey, tell us a little bit about Neil Ellis and how the man from KWV, amongst others, came to have his own little tract of land.
Yeah, so really, we don't own our own land. Basically, when my father started out, his whole philosophy was it's impossible to do the best of everything on one estate. So he was basically the first winemaker to sort out different areas where he thought some varieties suits the area best. And yeah, so with that, we were the first to do a wine of origin from Elgin in 1990. And tonight we're going to taste the Groenekloof Sauvignon Blanc. We were the first to do a wine from the Groenekloof ward in Darling. And that's really how what our philosophy is about. So these days, I mean, we've trialed and tested a lot of varieties in different areas. And as well as some things worked, other things didn't work. So these days, basically, Sauvignon Blanc, our main focus is Groenekloof Darling. When we look at Chardonnay, we focus area Elgin. And then, of course, our Bordeaux varieties, we look towards Stellenbosch.
And the wine that you make, wine we're going to be tasting in just a moment, has developed something of a cult following, I think it is fair to say. And the word following is appropriate because that's exactly what you did. Your dad, very much a legend in South African winemaking, through Constantia, Zevenbach, we already mentioned KWV. What prompted you to follow in those footsteps? Was it always going to happen, or was there a little bit of a nudge from your dad to say, come on, you need to help out here?
Geez, Dan, that's quite a difficult one. I think... yeah, my mom said I was probably the only 5-year-old that never wants to become a policeman or fireman. I always just want to become a winemaker. And I think probably at the age of 2, I finished my first bottle of wine, basically my first bottle of wine. So, yeah, I think everything started there.
And you moved in. It's a family business very much. Charles, your brother, runs the finances. I know Margot's part of it all as well. And you get a real sense that it's very much a cooperative effort. Is there also still the guiding hand from your dad?
Yeah, very much so. So my father's still very much involved. Not so in the winery sense, but definitely a guiding hand. And I mean, he's got invaluable knowledge of the wine industry, of winemaking. I mean, every now and again, I need to, I always ask for his advice. And of course, yeah, just the way forward.
The journey that you took, drinking wine at the age of 2, which is very admirable, and working your way through under the auspices of your dad, it took you into studying wine properly. It's not just kind of picking up from your dad in the cellar and doing what he did. You've studied this properly. You've also spent some time traveling. I think you took a stretch out, some New World wine tasting, just tasting, drinking, exploring wine. How did that shape your philosophy and build on what you learned from your dad about the art of winemaking?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've had some time abroad and just drinking, tasting, and just having chats to winemakers and their philosophy. And I'd say that definitely changed my. Well, didn't change, but just it helped in tweaking some of our styles just getting it right. And I mean, our whole slogan is the pursuit of quality, and that's basically what we're going out for, is just focusing on what we're doing and just tweaking it where we can, and just upping our game, upping the quality of the wines, and just trying to get it right.
Which I think anybody who's had your wine will say you tend to get right almost all of the time, if not all of it. And we're going to be trying, as I said, a couple of those wines in just a moment. In terms of your approach, your philosophy, the wine that you're making, where do you stand now? Has it changed a lot since when you started over? I think, 2012, you took over as cellar master. Has a lot changed for you in those 9 years?
I think, in a certain sense, there's definitely bigger changes. I think I'd say one of it is definitely oaking. These days, our whole philosophy around oaking is not to add any flavor, but for us, oaking should only be there for the backbone and structure to the wine. So we've got a new way of thinking around oaking of our wines, red and white. And I'd say if you look at those wines, red and white, that's been in barrel, there's a really nice golden thread running through the wines.
Well, let's see if we can pick up the first bit of that thread. We've already mentioned this particular wine. It is the Reyneke Sauvignon Blanc. And it's a name you see quite often in South African wine, where you see Reyneke as somewhere that's become really synonymous with making Sauvignon Blanc. What is it about that particular part of the world that allows you as a winemaker to just get so much out of Sauvignon Blanc?
So, well, that area, it's really a small ward within Darling. And if you look at the area, it's a quite really arid area. I'd say the average rainfall is between 450, maybe up to 500 mils a year. And warmish days, but because of the proximity to the ocean, some of these vineyards are about 5 k's as the crow flies from the ocean. So having the warm days, we kind of have these really cool evenings. And I think what a lot of people don't know, the Atlantic Ocean is at its coolest during the summer months. So with that being said, your summer evenings and early mornings can get quite cool. I've been in Darling where in the middle of February where the morning temperature is 9 degrees Celsius. I mean, that's crazy. So that whole big temperature differences really help with your fruit development, your fruit flavors, and just giving real concentration to the wines. If you look at our specific Sauvignon Blanc, these are all from bush vines, average age between 30 and 35 years old. So a lot of these vines are already standing on that can be classified as old vines in South Africa. And really the area of Darling is also some of the oldest known soils being used for agricultural purposes. There's a lot of decomposed granite that kind of really helps with the minerality of adding minerality to the wines, and it also helps with your drainage.
I didn't know that the Atlantic was colder. You've educated me there during the summer months. Also, didn't realize that these were old bush vines. When we think of old bush vines and white wine, we immediately think Shannon Blanc and then possibly some Semillon as well. It's not something we hear quite so much of when it comes to Sauvignon Blanc. Is that because there just isn't much Sauvignon Blanc on old bush vine, or because it just doesn't get too much attention?
Well, I think if you look at Sauvignon Blanc and bush vines, you'll most probably find it in the more arid areas like Swartland and Darling. The reason for that is it's a little easier to grow if you don't have any irrigation to start off with your vines. And but there are still some bush vines still being planted in Sauvignon. We quite like it because you have in one vine you have a wider range of flavors. Our particular vineyards, we don't even. What adds more to these to our wines is we have some of our vines growing at about 200 meters above sea level, and then it goes up to about 350 meters above sea level. We also have a vast array of different aspects. Some of our slopes face northeast, and some of it all the way southwest. So, yeah, we have a big flavor spectrum to work with.
All of which comes together in the Groenkloof Sauvignon Blanc. If somebody's picking this up for the first time or is browsing through Pick and Pay, I wonder if I should get this as my Sauvignon Blanc. What are you getting out of this particular wine at this particular stage of its life?
So you'll definitely find a lot of these really nice tropical fruit flavors, some passion fruit, on the nose, even a little bit of like black currants, coming through. Well, not black currants, but what do you call cassis? Cassis leaves, and some nice. There's some herbaceousness lingering in the background, but also some nice zesty lemony flavors. But really, Dan, I think this wine will even reward you a little bit more. Usually our Sauvignon really opens up only a year or two in the bottle.
So this is now 2020. Yep, there we go. So if I keep this, another year or two, maybe even slightly longer? Is it going to change? Is it going to improve? Is it going to give me something completely different?
I think this one will definitely improve within 5 years, and then 5 to 10 years you'll find it'll be something completely different. But we are known for our wines that can age pretty well. We have some of these wines still dating back to the 90s that's in still still good nick.
Listen carefully, please. Johannesburg white wine drinkers. Sauvignon Blanc does not have to be drunk within 8 minutes of it landing on the shelf. You can hang on to it a little. And that's a fascinating aspect of it, is watching how it develops, and a grape that many people don't always think of giving a bit more time to. This one will reward it. We do tend to think of giving a bit of time to a red wine and a red blend, and that is our second wine. It's the Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot. It's a nice simple duet between the two. Tell us a little bit about this particular wine.
So this is a blend of a couple of different Cab vineyards as well as Merlot vineyards in Stellenbosch. We try to focus on the more cooler growing areas within Stellenbosch. Particularly, we focus on the Jonkershoek Valley as well as the Bottler Hills, and this is a blend of those two wards in Stellenbosch. I think in this blend, it's not only Cabernet and Merlot, but you'll find some Petit Verdot in there, even Cab Franc, and a little bit of Malbec.
Aha, so this is we're allowed to put in a little bit of extra stuff, but we don't have to say anything, so it doesn't confuse things too much, which is great. I love that element of it, and for me it's when the winemaker becomes the artist, because you're tasting and you're developing and you're picking up it needs a bit more here, a bit more there. Is that a daily process, a weekly process, and how challenging is that for you as a winemaker to know, I know where I want to go, this is where I am, this is what I need to add a splash of to get it just right?
Yeah, it takes sometimes it takes it's a matter of minutes and you've got the perfect blend. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer, especially if you have different elements to work with. But it gets easier as you go on. I mean, once you've tasted your different elements, it's kind of like building Lego. You kind of know what to add, what not to add, and it's putting those bricks together and ending up with what you want.
The same question as I asked you for the white in terms of hanging on to this. This is 2018, so 3 years down already. How much more time do we need to give it to get into the optimal space for you? And does the wine that you make still surprise you as it gets a bit older?
Yes, definitely. It's my wine. Yeah, the wines definitely surprise me as it gets older. We actually, yeah, this wine can age, I'd say, 20 years easily. 2018 as a vintage, I think it's a much more approachable vintage, so it's definitely something one can drink immediately. But this one will it'll improve with another 5 years in bottle. And then 10 years on, you'll find a lot of secondary characteristics. But 20 years down the line, there shouldn't be anything wrong with this bottle when you open it. It should still be really good.
Expect a call from me at the end of July 2041, and I shall hold you to that and see if it has got to where it should be. Some lovely wine. It is wine that people are going to be...
Will the wine last?
Yeah, what will be in better shape, Dan and Warren or the wine come 2041? The wine is available now, and this is one of the two added reasons for chatting you today, Warren. This is part of the Pick and Pay Wine Club this month, so normally 135 rand goes down to just 108 rand a bottle. But you've been rather generous, and I suspect you had to get Charles to sign off on this because he's the one who controls the numbers. But somebody who's buying a bottle of any Neil Ellis over the next month or so as a member of the wine club has got 5,500 rand worth of wine to walk away with, Warren.
Yeah, that's quite a nice prize.
It's a fabulous prize. So there is your selection. Before I ask you one last question regarding another Pick and Pay initiative, which is a very cool dinner, we've tried the two wines here. We've tried the Clonaclough Sauvignon Blanc. We've tried the Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot blend with a little touch of one or two other varietals. What's something else in the Neil Ellis range that might take people by surprise, that maybe is slightly unusual, a little bit different, that's worth exploring and trying out?
Well, for those who's a little bit intolerant of sulfur, we do have a sulfur-free range that we do. We do one in rosé, Sauvignon Blanc, as well as a Cabernet. Completely different wines to what you'll find in the Clonaclough Sauvignon Blanc. But yeah, like I said, if you're sulfur intolerant, it's definitely something to try. It's a nice alternative, and then definitely, well, you won't be sorry for trying a whole range.
That's absolutely no help whatsoever, Warren, but it just means we'll have to go out and try all of them. Lisa Harlow, referring to our earlier conversation about Sauvignon Blanc, I wish more people would age Sauvignon Blanc. It develops beautiful flavors. It certainly does. And then a question from Mpo Sugar, going back to my query to you as to whether your wines still surprise you, Warren. Mpo wants to know what surprises you, the texture or the taste more? Where is the greater element of surprise as your wine gets older?
Well, definitely the taste. Some of the wines, definitely the texture. It's sometimes some of the wines with that still have a lot of tannin and structure to it that I thought it would have lost over time. I'd say particularly I've had the pleasure to taste a 2001 Jonkershoek Cabernet Sauvignon. That wine was spectacular. I'd say if somebody still have a bottle, I'll buy it back from them.
All right. If you have one, speak to me. I'll happily work as intermediary and we'll flog it to Mr. Ellis. Last question for you in terms of something to look forward to early September as the Pick and Pay winemakers dinners continue. The 9th of September. So diarize that and look out for the tickets becoming available on Pick and Pay. A really fun element of drinking wine, of exploring wine, of experiencing wine is doing so within the context of great food. And it's going to be a lovely opportunity joining Chef Jonathan for us to try some of your wine, try it with some food, and really get the best out of both.
Yeah, I'm looking really forward to it. Dan, are you coming to cook for me?
If you've got the fire brigade on standby, I shall be there with great pleasure, Mr. Ellis. I shall definitely be there. I'm really looking forward to the Pick and Pay Winemakers Dinner. It's been terrific fun already this year. And if it means I get to drink your wine as well, Warren, then I'll be a very happy man.
Well, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. I'm also really looking forward to it. I can remember I did one 2 or 3 years ago, and it was a lot of fun and good food.
It certainly was. The food will be great. The wine will be just as much so. And we've had a taste of that this evening. Remember, if you're buying Neil Ellis wine over the course of the next month, and you remember that Pick and Pay Wine Club, you go into the draw over 5,000 Rand worth of wine from Neil Ellis. And that is a cracking prize to look forward to. The 26th of July to the 29th of August as a member of the wine club. Warren, thank you very much indeed. Really happy for you, as I am for everyone else in the wine world, that the industry is back up and running. Not quite at 100%, but we'll get there. Get that wine out. Keep making fabulous stuff. We do love it. I look forward to seeing you at that wine dinner early September down in the Cape.
Thanks, Dan. Have a nice evening. Enjoy the wine.
I most certainly will. Warren Ellis from Neil Ellis, taking over the reins from his father a little while back now, but his dad still very much part of the Ellis operation. That includes Margot, the sister who runs the brand. Charles runs all of the numbers. And I think little Alec is already starting to make some wine, probably Leia as well. So big thank you to Warren Ellis for joining us. And joining us with a Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot, which makes things rather interesting because our second guest also has a Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot to try. And we're going to see in the battle to the death of Cabernet Sauvignon Merlots how the two compare. We'll get that wine in a second. It's the story I'm just as excited about. As we say, a very warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, to Johan Reyneke. Johan, welcome.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me, man. What a privilege to be here.
Oh, awesome. It is an absolute pleasure. How are you doing? Are you walking on clouds? Are you going to be selling wine again today?
And I'm very grateful for it. We really, we need the support of the customers, and I think they need our wine equally. Everybody needs a good glass of wine tonight. I'm certainly having one, and I'm looking forward to it.
I think you're very much in the majority across South Africa there. Most people will be happily and gleefully filling up a glass of wine. And if they're filling up with a glass of Reyneke, then they are becoming younger and more healthier and better people as a result, because your wine is, it's kind of like, it's like a yoga class in a glass, really, such is the nature of what you do. And I'm fascinated to know a bit more about this, because the moment you mention the name Johan Reyneke, or you mention Reyneke wines, immediately people, oh yes, he runs around and wears organic clothing and dances naked under the moonlight and makes sure that all of his wine is perfectly crafted. And what I love about that is how not even 10 or even 5 years ago, people were still raising the occasional eye, but organic wine, no, I like my wine normal. And now people are understanding not only does it make for better wine, it makes for a better planet, it's just better all around. But how did that start? What was it that said to you that your wine journey has to take this path, and that what you are going to do in your life is make wine that's better for the planet?
So, Dan, my journey had a sort of a funny start. I'm not from a wine family, so I'm first generation in the wine business. And I also have no formal education in viticulture or oenology. So what happened to me is two things. One is I started off studying law. I fell in love with philosophy and in particular environmental ethics. And I did my postgrad degree at the University of Stellenbosch in environmental ethics. And I was busy with my master's when a really beautiful girl, who I can now say is my wife, left Stellenbosch and decided to go to America for a year. So I decided to wait for her, but I kind of stuck it out until April. And I couldn't wait any longer. And I then hopped on a plane and worked there for a year. And when I came back, my parents were a little bit, not taken aback, but I think the general idea was that if you're old enough to make those kind of decisions, you're really old enough to stand on your own 2 feet. So I came back and I desperately had to find a job before I could resume my studies. And you can imagine if you have a degree in philosophy, there's not a whole queue of people waiting to employ you. So I was actually at the waiting list, or on the waiting list at the local Spur in Stellenbosch for a bit. I couldn't get a job. I must mention my hair became quite long in America, and I looked quite a rough young man when I came back. But the end of it is that I got a job as a farm worker, as a vineyard laborer. And I worked in the vineyards, and I think it's a combination of the two. I think with knowledge comes obligation. So if you read about nature and you read about the impact that agriculture has on the world, and it's a significant contributor to global warming, and by the same logic, also one of the best tools we have to fight it or to remedy it. With that knowledge sort of comes a obligation to act in a specific way. But as a farm laborer, I never enjoyed working with hazardous chemicals. And I doubt there are any farm laborers who do. And the two just got me to a point where I decided I was not going to spray anymore. And I then became, initially by neglect, an organic farmer, and later by design. But this all sort of happened round about the year 2000, which is now, wow, 21 years ago already. I can't believe it. Time flies.
It's been a remarkable journey, and it's the one that's taken you into this almost iconic status as somebody who makes wines in the way that I think most of the world is now starting to push towards. How difficult was it when you started in this space to convince people that let's put away the fertilizer, let's set the spray aside, let's let nature take its course and try and do things more naturally? Was there a huge amount of resistance to what you were doing?
I think there was a big resistance on multiple fronts, but there was also a lot of support from various sources. The resistance came from producers and consumers alike. I think consumers, I remember vividly way back, I was in America, and I tried to sell my wine to the gentleman as an organic wine, and he stopped me and he said, I don't watch the Special Olympics. I only watch the Olympics. I don't drink organic wine. I only drink normal wine. And I couldn't believe the analogy he made for a start. It's just so politically incorrect on so many levels to even just think stuff like this, let alone say them. But there was a definite idea that if you couldn't make it the conventional way, you would try a fair trade wine or an organic wine to try and sort of move stock, which, of course, nothing could be further from the truth. I think if you look at Romani Conti, which is arguably probably the best wine in the world, they've been organic since the 50s. And the whole thing about wine is it's got a sense of place. Unlike Coca-Cola that comes from a factory, a bottle of wine is almost like a book about a farm. And when you drink it, it should tell you about that farm. And I really think the terroir, the sun and the air and the soil and everything that one tries to capture in that wine, one must not forget that, the soil is a very important part of terroir, not just the physical, whether it's shale or schist or granite, but also the biological nature of soil. Soil is alive. There's more life in a teaspoon of soil than there have ever been people on this planet. So it's a phenomenal space in which to operate. And I think, what one must, in fairness, to producers, I spoke a bit about the consumer, but I don't think that there are farmers who actually enjoy using herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides. I think people use them because they believe they have to. So these products and this industrialization of agriculture was developed with the best intent. People wanted to grow lots of food, reduce risk, make farming easier. And only at a later stage did this big environmental impact of this industrialization of agriculture sort of surface. And now we're in a space where we're frankly trying to continue farming, but in a more regenerative way. So instead of stripping nature and stripping the soil and mining it for profit, we're now trying to sort of leave it in a better state than we found it. And in the same time, you can sequestrate carbon and stuff on behalf of everyone else. So it can play a huge role in healing the earth going forward, farming that is. But I think what an easy way to explain to people at home is if you try and grow vegetables or flowers or something nice in your garden, the first thing you're going to do would be to remove the weeds because they compete for food and moisture with the plants that you're trying to cultivate. But if you go for a nice hike in the wilderness in the veld or up Table Mountain or Jonkershoek where I live, the only bare soil you will see would be a man-made road. So for soil to live and to flourish, it needs this interaction with plants and it needs to be covered and protected from the sun. And it seems like a bit of a paradox. Do I remove the weeds for the sake of my vines, or do I leave the soil covered for the sake of the soil life? But if you take a long-term view, this paradox disappears and it actually becomes a synergy. Because when microbes eat organic matter, they create humus. And the higher the humus content in the soil becomes, the more resilient the plants and the vines that live there become. So if you can build your humus levels to 5%, your plant resilience can increase by as much as 300%. So if you look after your soil, initially it might seem a challenging thing to do, but it will actually make your farming a lot easier downstream if you can just stick it out for the first few years. So I think there are a whole host of reasons why it was met with resistance, but things have definitely changed. And I would say the biggest driver of the change was not ethics or anything other than the consumer, because it doesn't make sense to just produce for the sake of production. You need to produce something that you can actually sell to the market, and the marketplace is changing fast and furiously. And people want to support businesses with, ethical business practice, be that looking after their staff or looking after their natural environment or whatever. And the triple bottom line, as they like to call it, is just increasingly becoming more and more important in the world of commerce, I believe, at least.
And I want to take that further in just a moment because I think it is such an important part of the conversation. Before we finish off, though, on the change and the moving over, so much of anything in the world, but particularly in the agricultural space, is dictated simply by economics. Well, this is cheaper, it's easier, we can get more return for our investors, we'll do it this way. Is it initially a more expensive process to shift away from your more industrial kind of farming styles to something that is more natural? And in the long term, are you finding it that it's much different? Is it more expensive, less than expensive? What impact does that have on your style of farming?
So I think it really depends on the health of the soil. To be honest, if you farmed, like the area that I started was farmed very aggressively, conventionally for a long period of time. So when I did the conversion, I did take a dip the first 3 years where I had sort of suboptimal yields, and I was challenged. I had to really believe in what I was doing, the passion was absolutely a prerequisite to see things through. But as soon as the soil started coming right, everything started making sense. I think, well, for one, the yields started stabilizing. But most importantly, probably from a farming perspective, is that we actually started to make a bit of money on the farm again. And I remember sitting with my auditor, and it was so strange because, when I farmed conventionally on our farm, I used to get, say, 8 or 9 tons per hectare. And then when I farmed organically, it dipped down to 6 or 7 tons per hectare. But the farm was more profitable, and I couldn't understand it. And the biggest saving was actually on the production costs. So you can imagine, I think agriculture today it used to be controlled by 3 big multinational corporations. 2 of them have merged. And these guys aren't really interested in South African rands. They want euros or pounds or dollars or Swiss franc. So if you have to buy products from them in South Africa, given our currency slips on a yearly basis, your production costs skyrocket over time because you can't just up your prices of your wine every year the same way that, say, the price of Roundup or whatever would increase. So I think taking control of the production costs was a big saving. And then we actually go beyond organics. We are what you call a biodynamic farm. And I don't want to labor the point, but what it does is it's like the oldest form of organic farming that exists. And what it tries to do is it tries to align different organic systems to feed off each other, to almost create a circular economy on the farm. So I'll give you practical examples. I farm with grapes and wine, but I also have a herd of 50 or 16 goonie that live on my farm. They live the entire winter in the vineyards. And then in the summer, obviously, I can't leave them in the vines because they'll chow all my grapes. But what I'm trying to share with the guests and with you is that when you make wine, you also generate a lot of waste. There's a small mountain of pips and stems and skins outside the wine cellar. And when you farm with cows, you obviously have this massive buildup of manure as well. But the moment you start farming with both, the problem disappears because you can take all the manure from the cows and put that in the vineyards. And you take all the waste from the cellar and feed that back to the cows again. And in a nutshell, where I used to spend between 50 and 100,000 rands a year on fertilizer, I now probably sell between 50 and 100,000 rand a year worth of oxen. So it's just a different way of looking at it, but it works for me.
And you can understand why. It's a great model on so many levels. Reginald Beckmore watching from Cheetah Plains up in the Sabi Sands. Nice to see you, Johan, and thanks for explaining that the vines don't eat rocks, but they drink rocks, which is part of your range. What a way of exemplifying what it is. Thank you, Reggie. Such a great way with words. And in Faux Sugar, can we call Reyneke wines vine huggers? Well, I think we probably can if you've seen Johan's handle on social media. And Lisa Harlow, I love your philosophy, Johan. Been drinking your wine for a long time and learned so much today. People are enjoying your wine. There are so many of them. 2-part question for you before we get into the wine itself. How difficult has it been to shift the mentality of people like the moron earlier who made his Olympic illusion and getting them over to drinking the wine on its own terms and not on a preconception, and then make it absolutely clear once and for all on Dan Really Likes Wine, does farming biodynamically have any influence on the taste, the flavor, the mouthfeel of what we're drinking?
Wow, that's a lot of questions. I'm going to try and answer 2 of them. Wow, I've forgotten the first one already. Can I talk about? Okay, so I think a big issue is, does organic and biodynamic farming influence the taste of wine, and does it improve it or not? So to me, we've got a very interesting thing. We've got 3 tiers of wine at Reyneke Wines. We've got the organic range, which we're going to taste today. And then we have a biodynamic range and we have a reserve range as well. But a very interesting fact is that in front of our house is a block of Sauvignon Blanc that I planted in 1994. And when I farmed conventionally, all the grapes in the blocks in that block tasted almost identical, and we made a wine from that vineyard, one type of Sauvignon Blanc from that vineyard. And about 7 years after converting to organics and biodynamics, at harvest time, when we walked through the blocks just before picking and we were tasting the grapes, it was increasingly apparent that different pockets of the block started tasting differently. That was very strange. Why did they always taste the same and now they taste differently? And to such an extent that we actually started to make different Sauvignon Blancs from the same vineyard. Our reserve white and our biodynamic Sauvignon Blanc comes from exactly the same vineyard. They're just little pockets of that vineyard. So initially the thinking was maybe it's just sort of microclimatic conditions. In the old days, every vine got a handful of fertilizer. They all grew in a homogeneous fashion. Today they don't. They have to live off the soil. There's a lot of soil variation. So some vines grow vigorously and others less so. And you can visualize a vigorous vine will create more shade and the bunches will hang in the shade for longer. And one that's not as vigorous will let more sunlight in. And our thinking was perhaps it was just that. It was just more shade and more sunlight that gave the different tastes to the different pockets of the vineyard. And then we started working with wine biotechnology of the University of Stellenbosch. And they had a Dr. Evodia Sitati. She's a microbiologist. And she started looking at soil life, microbial activity in our vineyard, in neighboring vineyards, in pockets of virgin fynbos. And what she saw was there was an incredible diversity, balance within that diversity. But what was interesting was that there was also groups of microbes that seemed to live in different pockets in the vineyard. And we know from scientific research of human beings that your microbes in your stomach, in the past we thought they were only there to digest your food, but today people know that there's a correlation between what lives in your stomach and your overall well-being. So the absence or presence of certain microbes there could be correlations between things like that and depression, for example. And this begs the question, if it is like that for people, could it not also be like that for a vineyard? So could the life in the soil where that vine lives for 30, 40, 50, 60 years not also influence the way its grapes taste? Now, I don't know that. I like to believe that, and we're busy with the University of Stellenbosch and one in Italy to try and get some research going. But to me, it makes sense. If you speak to a winemaker and you ask them, what's the most important thing about wine, they're going to tell you it's terroir. Wine isn't made, it's not chemistry in the cellar, it's grown somewhere. And if you ask them what's the most important variables in terroir, they're going to say, well, the rain and the aspect and everything, but probably the soil is the most important variable. If you ask winemakers to tell you about their soil, they'll have typically a physical understanding of that soil. So the soils are sandy, so you're going to have sort of a fruit-forward profile, or the soils are granitic, so you can expect a sort of a minerality in the whites or a lot of structure in the reds, or, clay soil is very good for Merlot. And then further understanding would go to a chemical understanding of the soil, the pH of the soil, but we're not at a point where we understand how the life in the soil influences our wine. And I think that's sort of cutting edge terroir. That is the new of winemaking. And if you farm organically and biodynamically, you basically encourage the life in your vineyards to flourish. And I think that is very important. But I'm obviously subjective and prejudiced, and you must take it from where it comes. But that's my view on the subject.
And I think it's both a fascinating view and one that is so relevant to the world in which we live. And it's supported by a lot of people watching. Elizabeth Bardin saying, Johan, you're a true inspiration. Thank you for what you do and be for a more sustainable earth. And follows it up with, let's educate the world. Well, let's educate Dan really likes wine viewers with this wine. We don't have much time to try it because it's just been so much fun talking about this. And so I'm going to try and taste this through the prism of what you've just been saying, Johan. So I'm picking up here. There's a little bit of dead butterfly. I'm getting some worms. I think there's a baby caterpillar in here. I am being forced and very cheerfully so. We've got 2 organic wines here. This is the Shannon Blanc. What I'm getting is an absolute blast of freshness out of this. Tell us very quickly a little bit about the organic Shannon Blanc.
Okay, so I mentioned already we've got different tiers. Our organic range is our go-to wine. That's what Mila and myself have most evenings at home. We'll definitely be having a bit of organic, probably Shannon tonight. She loves it. The idea is that this one must be accessible. It must be drinkable right now, not something you have to buy and put away and cellar for a few years before it really shows its true colors. It must be affordable. Organics is not just for rich people. It must be wine that anyone can afford to buy. And then I think it must be unadulterated. It must be brutally honest. And importantly, we want to capture some of that vitality that you get in the vineyard and the wine itself as well. So if I look at this Shannon, to me, I get sort of floral notes on the nose, and then a bit of sort of fruity bits as well, perhaps a bit of quince or pear, maybe a bit of apple blossom coming through. But if you just, let it go through the motions and maybe forget one of the bottles in your cupboard for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, that profile will obviously change. And that sort of citrusy note that you get now will become a riper apricot note. Perhaps a bit of almond would develop. The wine will become a bit more, richer in a way. But I think it's a lovely wine. I think it completely over-delivers at that price point. And it's just fresh and beautiful and, one of my favorites. Nice wine to drink.
It falls into the category of very dangerous, Mr. Reyneke, because it goes down very deeply indeed. It is the Shannon. It is alive and fresh and fabulous. And definitely just a little hint of Stellenbosch earthworm. Loving that. Let's have a quick taste. The other one. Now, this is the big one because we've already had Warren Ellis with his Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot. He did cheat a bit because he's tossed in a little bit of Petit Verdot and 1 or 2 others. Is this just Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot? And introduce us to the wine.
Okay, so this is Cab Merlot, 50% other one. That's Warren Ellis.
The Reyneke.
Busted. Equal parts Cab Merlot. I think the idea of the cab is to give a bit of structure to the wine. You can, if you visualize a person's body, perhaps a beautiful lady's body is a better way to visualize it. So the cab would really sort of be her backbone and a structure. And then the Merlot just softens things out. And those are the beautiful, voluptuous curves that one gets. Again, you're looking at the organic range. So you're looking at grapes that come from lower down on the slopes, easier to drink, not quite as structured. I definitely don't think this wine will last as long as the Neil Ellis Cab Merlot will. I wouldn't put it away for a decade or 2. But I think if you drink it now, it's going to be really, just soft and smooth and just delicious. I hope guys you can bring it back. We'll make a plan.
It's and I love the philosophy where it extends as an organic wine to one that is on very much the affordable space, because it takes organic. I think it's an important part of the conversation where you're not saying, okay, well, we've made this wine so particularly and we've done it in a biodynamic or an organic style, therefore it costs more, so only a few people are going to be able to buy that. Is so important, and I love that element of it. As I love the wine, and I agree that Neil Ellis might last a little longer, but this, much like the Shannon, it's lovely and fresh, and it's not going to last long, I suspect, on a Johannesburg winter's night. Lisa Harlow, referring to the Shannon a moment ago, I agree, and it's one of my favorite everyday Shannons. Lisa, by my calculation, you've got 82 favorite everyday wines from your appearances in the comments, which is great. I love that. Joel Killian Silord Mawere says very simply learning. Well, I'm really glad to hear that. That's such important. I learn so much on this show every single week. And then Corbus Chabert, future can only be green. Johannes Joester. So there we go. Corbus.
Yay! Corbus is a legend.
All right. Very quickly, before we let you go, now we need to have you back on the show again soon, because there's so much more still to learn. And I think we're now in a space, Johan, where it's not that people don't want to drink organic wine. I think they actively do, but I think they also want to know more about it, understand why what they're drinking is the right way to be making wine. And I think that's so crucial. The moment people understand, you're so much further down the road in terms of winning the battle. You've been through a long battle already. You've won over so many people. The next few years, where is South Africa going in terms of becoming more organic, possibly becoming more biodynamic, and understanding as an industry how much of a role this approach to making wine can have in a stronger and more sustainable future?
Dan, so, in my opinion, sustainability is a three-legged chair. Nature is one of the important legs. The other leg would be people. We have to look after each other. And the third leg of the chair would be money. If you don't look after money, the chair also falls over. So if you're going to be sustainable and be green, it always comes sort of with a total package of also looking after the people of the farm. I think that is very important. And then phasing everything in so that you don't upset the financial apple cart. And that is easier said than done, but it is the way of the future, and it's definitely the way things are heading.
And I think we've seen that on the show a number of times in the last year when we've had the WWF on and their sustainable project and the Sugarbird logo, which more and more estates are looking out for. It's all part of a process. It won't happen overnight, but thanks to people like Johan, it is gaining a lot more traction, a lot more momentum. And as we've seen from the comments here, a lot more people are not just understanding why it's important, but appreciating it and loving the wine as a result. Johan, the wine has been great. I can't wait for some more of it. And I can't wait to have you back on the show. There's a lot more to talk about in this space. I think it is so important, and there's nobody better to talk about it with than you, which leads me to one very, very last question. If you have a choice, and it's a straight choice, you can only choose one or the other, the absolutely perfect bottle of Reyneke Reserve or that perfect tube with your surfboard in hand, which one are you taking?
The perfect tube. Every day. All day.
I had a suspicion that was going to be the answer.
Of course. It's not even a question.
Top amateur surfer and occasional biodynamic wine farmer, Johan Reyneke.
Lekker, man. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to the wine dinner one of these days as well. And I hope you can join us on that, Dan. Thanks so much.
Johan, been a delight. Thanks for all you do for South African wine, and thanks for shining a light in the right direction. We appreciate it. Cheers. So Johan Reyneke, what a fascinating conversation. It's such an important part of the direction in which wine is going. And I think for us as consumers, as people are drinking wine, understanding what that wine is doing to the planet we live on is really, really important. And it got laughed off a bit years ago. It was all Greenpeace and bunny hugging, but I think it's a very, very different space now. Wellington Moromba saying, Johan, I'll be joining you soon at the farm. Wellington doing such great work with the Black Cellar Club in South Africa. Lovely to have you watching the show, Wellington. Thank you. And Elizabeth Bardan, awesome show. Well, I can take no credit between Warren and Johan, two terrific guests with some fascinating insight into the world of wine. We are now able to buy, we're now able to drink wine at restaurants, we're able to celebrate our industry. So let's keep on doing that. Remember that competition is now up and running. Your chance to win a Jeroboam 3 liters of Anthony Rupert Jean Noir Rosé. Follow the social media channels for Dan Really Likes Wine on Twitter, on Instagram, or Facebook to confirm exactly how you can win that prize. And I will see you back again on Thursday for more fantastic South African wine and more great stories from the people who make it. Cheers. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.